Hello, everyone. This is Isabel. I'm at Submarine Networks World 2025 in Singapore. And today I'm joined by Elina Noor. She's Senior Fellow Asia Programs. Elina, welcome to my hot seat.
Thank you so much for having me, Isabel.
So tell me about your organization.
So, I'm with a think tank that's based in Washington, D.C. It's called the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, although I myself am based in Singapore.
Okay. What does the organization do?
So, we are a think tank, and what we do is we do research and we offer policy recommendations. I myself work on tech policy and governance in Southeast Asia, which is why I'm here with you at Submarine Networks World.
So you just mentioned governance. What type of governance do you think the Southeast Asia subsea cable industry requires?
Well, let's start from the very beginning and foundations of where I think we should be going with governance. There are a number of countries in Southeast Asia that haven't yet made a determination about whether subsea cables are critical infrastructure or not. I know that seems very basic, but that has to be done first and foremost in order to allocate enough resources in order to protect and maintain the resilience of submarine cables in Southeast Asia. This includes a landlocked country like Laos. We often forget about these landlocked countries, but that's, I think, the first foundational step we have to take. The second foundational step that we might have to consider is streamlining regulations at the domestic as well as regional level in order to facilitate and make it easy for repairs, maintenance to take place so that operators are not caught up with bureaucratic hurdles. And then finally, I think involving as many stakeholders as possible, even the unusual suspects, as I like to call them. For example, having consultations with climate scientists, because we have to keep in mind the ecological impact of not just the cable works that are being done, but also the whole technology stack and its impact on the environment.
Okay. A lot to be done.
Yes, a lot.
So there's a growing dependency on subsea cables in Southeast Asia. How is that impacting these nations?
Yeah, as you mentioned, growing dependence because of increasing demand for all things tech, a lot of tech optimism in this region. And so, what that means in the future is a possibility of being vulnerable to some of the geopolitical pressures that are bearing down, especially on the subsea cables industry. And so, what we find now is that although geopolitical pressures are not completely new to the region, we can go back in history for all this. But these states that exist today in Southeast Asia were not independent nations having to make and ensure their sovereignty as they do today. And with the geopolitical pressures that we now have, these commercial decisions are turning into security decisions. And countries in the region have been used to segmenting what is commercial and economic from what is national security related. We don't have that luxury anymore in this region. You also have to look at the ownership structure around cables that's changing. Again, the vulnerability is that there's too much of a concentration of power in only a few big players. What this means is that countries, government stakeholders in this region might find themselves almost locked in to long-term infrastructure with only one set of providers that are geopolitically aligned to one power or another. And so you have this conflation of what's geopolitical with traditional ownership structures around commercial decisions.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. It's quite a challenge to come. And I guess it brings me to my third question. What about the future? What can expect for the future for that region?
Yeah, I think there are at least two ways of looking at this, right? One is a slightly sobering vision of the future, which is that there's going to be a fragmented landscape. If we go back to some of these geopolitical pressures that are visiting us now, we see a bifurcation happening between the US and China, the US and its allies on one side, forcing countries into very difficult decisions, and then the Chinese, of course, on the other, almost on a defensive, but coming with their own counter-offensive in some cases. So there are carrots and sticks that are being offered by both sides to Southeast Asia. Hopefully, we won't end up with that situation, a bifurcated subsea cables landscape. The other is a more collaborative vision of the future. And I think here, countries in the region have a role to play so that they can be more proactive in shaping the future that they want.
And let's hope the second option happens.
I hope
We,
so
we,
too.
we would like that.
I would very much like that too.
Okay. Thank you for an amazing interview. I think all that you said is super interesting, and it's quite challenging, but a lot of exciting times ahead.
We'll have more conversations, I'm sure.
I hope so. Thank you so much for a great interview.
Thank you very much, Isabel.
Everyone, thank you for watching, and until my next hot shot.